Right. Hungani Ndlovu.
Yes, sir.
Wow, thank you, man. I really appreciate you being here.
Of course.
So, Inside Acting, first episode.
I am keen to see how this goes.
Yeah, you and me both. So I was thinking, do you remember where we first met?
To be honest, I don't.
Yeah.
I just feel like I don't know how to explain this, but I just feel like I've known you.
Right.
Like I haven't been able to put, oh, this is where we first met, or like,
yeah,
there was this like pinnacle moment in our knowing of each other. Like I don't have that, but I just feel like I've always known you for some reason.
I kind of feel the same because I was thinking about it, and then I ended up thinking about the first time I actually saw you. Which was you doing your work. We didn't meet, but I saw you on stage. Can't remember the name of the play, but it was at the Market Theatre, and your character was doing an American accent.
Oh, that's like,
years
that's
ago.
2016. Yeah. Okay.
Do you remember what play that was?
Yeah, that was A Raisin in the Sun.
A Raisin in the Sun.
I was well in my 20s, and I was playing a 12-year-old. Yeah.
Yes. I remember thinking, wow, this is such a good American accent.
Oh, thank you.
Because I think there were a couple of great performances in that play, and I was really, really impressed. I remember thinking, yeah, this guy, and at that time, I think you were also on Scandal.
Yeah, I had just started shooting, so I hadn't yet TX'd yet.
Okay.
So we were on stage in Feb.
Yeah.
And then I TX'd end of March.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was like a month in between. But I was already shooting, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you say that Romeo is the role that put you on the map?
Yeah, I think that goes without saying.
Yeah.
Scandal was definitely the biggest platform that I had been on at that time.
Yeah.
I'd never really done something that was on, if I can say, like mainstream TV,
Yeah.
So Romeo being the character that it was and how I portrayed the character, it just so happened that it connected with people.
It did.
Yeah.
It took off in such a big way.
In a crazy way. Crazy way. I never expected that.
You know what's really interesting is that when I was thinking about our discussion today, I was thinking about the parallels in our lives. All right? We both do television and theater. Okay, sharp, granted.
Not many do.
Yeah, true. And Scandal, I think at that time was shooting at Sasani Studios.
Yeah.
And Rhythm City was shooting at Sasani Studios when Rhythm City was still shooting.
Yeah.
That's one of the parallels. And I think for me, the role that I played as Jabu on Rhythm City was also a role that I feel put me on the map.
Oh, wow.
People still talk about that role to this day.
Take.
You know, one of those roles where you just can't live it down.
It doesn't, because it's like the first introduction you have to the audience.
Exactly.
Or the larger audience. It's almost like first impressions.
Yeah.
How do you, I guess, like handle that? Because like you've done so many other things thereafter.
Yeah.
Like, does it feel like the other stuff is not as meaningful, or like how do you?
At first, I mean, when I think it's been years now, and I think at first when people used to say, Jabu, Rhythm City, and I had already done so many roles, I used to get a little bit upset. I used to be like, okay, so you're telling me you haven't seen everything else that I've done? I mean, the last time I was on screen as Jabu and Rhythm City was ever on screen was 2013. At that time, for the role anyway. The role finished in the story around 2013. So I was like, how? You mean you haven't seen everything else that I've done? But I've kind of, come to accept it now. And the thing that's interesting about that role is that it was the first of many villain roles that I've come to play, Sure. And I kind of accept it now. And I'm like, okay, well, that's one of, an iconic role. It just will never die down. So, yeah, I kind of just take it on the chin now. And just, Did you know how big the role, or did you have any idea of how big the role would be at the time?
I had like
for Romeo.
I had like a glimpse, but because like me, Hungani, had never been on anything mainstream. I mean, yes, I could say I was in mainstream theater,
Yeah.
but that doesn't have the same reach as like mainstream TV.
Right.
I didn't know what big is. You know, like
Yeah.
when you're saying, "Oh, it's like this is like a big role," you
Yeah,
know, like
yeah.
the show wants all of these, like okay, you know, but I
Same.
couldn't really see it because also like big, we go from big South Africa to like big America. It's like
Yeah.
those are way too different of bigs. So it's like
Different
I didn't
worlds.
know.
Yeah.
But when I got called by a family member back home in Hazyview, and they're like, "Hey, Baba, you're on a billboard here, the taxi rank." I was like,
What?
"Wait, what?" I didn't even know there were billboards. Wait a minute.
Yeah.
So yeah, I had no idea what was coming.
Wow. So I was thinking about a role that it's always hard to think about these roles when something as specific as something that made me vulnerable. I can think of a couple. But I think the one that comes strongly to my mind first is I played Jesus Christ
Yeah, whoa.
in
Really?
in a play called Messiah.
Oh, hectic.
And I was at Wits.
Wow.
It happened to be a master's production. So that year, the master's directing students had cast second years in their productions, and I was second year. And I ended up playing Jesus in this production because a friend of mine, Imran, who happened to be Muslim, had played Jesus Christ the first year we did Messiah. And this is a Stephen Burkhoff, by the way.
Okay.
All right. So, and remember, his standpoint is that Jesus Christ was actually a communist, and that he had an escape door. He didn't actually die.
Hectic.
He had an escape door through the grave. You know.
Underground
I didn't know
tunnels.
all of these details about what he thought, but
Right.
you know, it's a crazy take. I remember a
need to
nun
look him
walking out of one of our performances. But anyway,
Hectic.
besides the point, at the end of that year, when we first played Messiah, Imran got convicted that he is actually he shouldn't play that role because he insulting Jesus Christ and that he is a prophet. He's recognized as a prophet in Islam.
Right.
So he pulled out. And the director looked at me and I was playing Caiaphas the year before.
Okay.
The director looks at me and is like, "You've got to take on the Jesus Christ role." I took on the Jesus Christ role. I mean, I remember it was so difficult. One, because it's Stephen Burkhoff and the monologues are hard. And it's monologues after monologues. There's one particular monologue with Jesus Christ on the cross.
Oh.
On this particular night, I had a hectic flu.
Oh.
So now I'm fighting against my voice not working along with me,
Breathing.
trying to breathe, trying to project. But there's also other difficulties.
Phlegm.
Phlegm, things are happening, my head is pounding. That was hard. It was hard. And I had to
can
be
imagine.
undressed. I was in a loincloth sitting there, suffering through.
Now you got chills. People are like, "Oh, look at this guy."
Yeah.
Oh,
You know what I mean? and I distinctly remember a nun walking out of that production.
Sure.
Yeah, that's how unimpressed she was. So that role showed my vulnerabilities because of many different reasons. Yeah,
Yo, that's deep.
yeah. At least that's one that comes to my mind
Like
from theater.
Even if you hadn't like explained all of the different stuff you just explained now, just playing Jesus Christ is just like, ooh.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Hold on.
yeah.
I think
Crazy.
for me, it's a character that I played in a short film, and the film actually hasn't come out yet.
Okay.
So I'm not gonna name it, obviously.
Yeah.
Just in case it never does come out. Exactly. But we shot this end of 2023.
Okay.
And It was a story of a guy who basically lost a significant other, and held on for so long, but wanting to move on, but struggling because he's been holding on.
Yeah.
And by lost I mean like she passed away.
All right.
So not like a breakup.
Yeah.
And so in the story, there comes a point where he sees her and she says it's okay. And then he finally has his moment to move on,
To be able
his
to let
closure.
go.
So that for me was so challenging to do because I'm very big on like sense memory
Okay, that's interesting.
and the type of places that
Yeah.
where you have to grab from
Yeah. Oh, real.
are very real. So it was a very challenging role to commit to, but once I committed, then it was a very challenging role during that time because
Sure.
of just how vulnerable I was. Like even just like the AD speaking to me, like it was like you gotta come, be delicate.
Yeah.
Okay, we are fragile.
Yeah, absolutely. People don't realize.
Yeah. So
People don't realize that we step into real emotions
Yeah.
in order to tell these stories.
Yeah.
You know, we consider our characters to be human beings. We have to, because we have to be believable.
Yeah. I
Wow,
remember there was
it's
this
incredible.
one scene we had essentially run out of time on
Yeah.
set, and like short films, like it's tough.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
book a B&B for like 7 hours, and
Oh,
then you
man.
shoot, and then like you gotta come, be delicate.
Yeah.
Okay, we are fragile.
Yeah.
So,
Time up.
and we're in Pretoria, we're a bunch of black young people shooting in a white establishment. So then I say to the director and the DOP, because they were like, "Cool, now we got it. Let's pack up. It's a wrap, guys." Wanting to speed up, and I was
Right.
like, "I need to go again.
Yeah.
I get it. Things are,
Yeah.
but if money needs to be paid, let the money be paid. But we need one more take." Because I was just like, I haven't given this guy his
Yes.
due. Like he is due something,
Respect. Yeah.
and I haven't. That take was
Wow.
like, even like when you finish doing something and you're just like,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah. You've left it on the floor.
It's done.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Do you find it difficult to get out of that state?
Sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes
Yeah.
if I haven't like, if I can say, formalized my de-rolling like method or process for that particular character prior to getting there,
Yeah.
then by the time I'm there, I'm now trying to figure out that process.
Yeah.
So in moments like that, it can be difficult, and because sometimes you don't really have a lot of time
Yeah.
before you start shooting. So
Yeah.
like sometimes the prep work is very
Yeah. There's no time for
on the
process.
nose. Yeah,
It's like,
so
let's
by the
go.
time you think you're gonna shoot all of those hectic scenes next week, they're like, yeah, so we're starting heavy deep inside.
Yeah.
And you're like, "Wha-
Yeah.
hey."
Yeah. Day one on set.
You're like, "Whoa."
For some reason, every time for me, day one on set is the day where I'm fighting.
You see,
I'm like, "How, guys?
you see
Can't you
now.
ease us in?"
And you gotta come in hot, ready to go.
Come in hot. It's like you gotta come in guns blazing. It's
Yeah, so in moments
crazy.
like that, it's sometimes challenging because
Yeah.
I know that like music plays a role.
Yeah.
Having like a particular song.
Oh, that's incredible. That's what I have too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it plays a huge role.
It does, particularly when you have you have a heavy day with a lot of emotion, and it's a character that you have to pick up again tomorrow.
100%.
On the way home, for me, it's got to be the music
Yeah.
that I listen to.
Yeah.
Then I know I'm getting back into myself.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And I know it's not something that I'm burning. I'm not burning anything like characters costume or anything like that.
Yeah.
But I need to get back into myself and be myself during the night until I pick up the lines again, all of that kind of stuff.
Do you have anything that you do like your clothing or your character's clothing to signify that like this is character versus like sagging your pants or not sagging your pants?
Not necessarily doing anything to the costume, but just getting into the costume for me says I'm wearing the character in a sense. You know what I mean? Shoes, dude. Shoes are the biggest thing for me.
Yeah, shoes play a huge role.
Shoes play a huge role. They define how I walk. They define how the character walks. I might have an idea that I've played at home in my own room, how I think the character will walk. Shoes just determine it at the end of the day. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the shoes one I love a lot. So even with the Romeo character, like I wore these fake Timberlands.
Yeah.
And I tie my shoelaces, like me, Hungani, I tie my shoelaces.
Right.
And then I was like, what would it be like if I didn't tie these Tims?
Right.
And it like completely transformed my walk.
Yeah.
And I was like, cool. This is what we're going with.
Yeah, man.
So every other pair of shoes that I got had to be like slightly loose, not like tied to just so that I could.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, just talking about how to get into emotions, the character's emotions. For me, I think I favor technique more than sense memory.
Fair.
I'll tell you why. There was a time when
It's painful.
It is. It is. Yeah. Okay. So for the benefit of people that might not know, when we talk about sense memory, we're talking about going back into your memory as Hungani,
Your memory bank.
And finding that emotion. If it's sadness, you're going to go back and find in your memory bank where you were sad. Think about what made
and
you
what
sad.
that felt like.
And what that felt
because
like.
it's more than just the top layer of emotion, you know.
Exactly.
So it's like finding that memory of that sad moment.
Yeah. The root
what
of
does
it.
that feel like physically?
Yeah.
What does it smell like? What does it taste like? All of that in
All the
order
layers.
to then
What does it
bring
sound
it,
like?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know. The greatest example that I usually give my students is when you're holding a cup like this. This doesn't have a hot liquid for those who are watching.
Yeah.
But if I was to hold it like it has hot liquid, in my memory bank, what do I have in order to then bring this to real life so that it looks like I'm sipping something that is actually hot, but it's actually cold?
That's so good.
So
That's so good. And for me, a good example of that is because I play a lot of villain characters. A lot of the time, my character has a gun. Sometimes they give you like a
how I
flimsy
wish.
little gun that doesn't have weight, and they really just don't have an option of a gun. You have to make that work and make it look convincing.
100%.
I try to remember what it's like carrying a gun with weight.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's interesting. It's little intricate things like that. So sometimes it's not about heavy, sad emotions or anything. It's about the sense of it. You tap into your five senses of what that was like. You know. So anyway, I did the whole sense memory thing for this character, for this one particular character, and it was hard. It was one of those days where this was actually a contractual dispute. I did 20 scenes that day back to back.
Whew.
Yeah. Somebody thought that's normal. That's fine. Anyway, and I'm
You
talking
are
about
stronger than me, my
and I'm talking about different kinds of emotions. In this scene you're crying, the very next scene you're happy, the very next scene you're angry and you're fighting. It's like it was insane, okay? Difficult. What added another layer of difficulty was the crew. The crew just happened to be very rowdy that day. So now you're trying to play an emotion. And I remember the character had lost somebody he considered to be a son. And he's literally looking at his body. He has to get into this. I remember 2 weeks later washing dishes at home and breaking down. And the only thing that I could connect to why I was breaking down in this random everyday life moment was that on set that day, I couldn't fully experience the emotion, which was connected to another thing in my memory bank. So it was all over the place, you know. I had to be reminded by my lovely wife that, hey, remember, the character doesn't exist. You do. So that's just how important it is that people need to realize, especially actors, young aspiring actors need to realize how important it is to have a de-rolling method.
And technique.
And technique. Technique's very important.
Because, like, even in the world of sense memory, the magic if still plays a huge role.
Absolutely.
You know, so it's just if you're not in a place where you can fully exercise and play, it sits
in a conducive environment.
It sits because you've brought it out. You know, and once you've actually explored it and let it go, then it can go again.
Yes, exactly.
But you can't just bring it out of
and then halfway
and then you're like
cut and then you go
we don't make it. So I'm sure you're gonna go back to where you came from.
No, it doesn't work
that's
like
crazy.
that. Yeah, it's insane.
On a random day washing dishes.
Yeah.
Oof.
Yeah, it all came back to me.
Yeah.
Anger, sadness, grief, all of it mixed into this bag of emotions, you know.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, having said all of that, where did you study, man?
I studied in the US. So I usually don't say like where I studied, like the institution. Why? And I mean, the information is there if you really, really want to know. But it's because I find that people connect the institution to my capabilities.
Okay.
And for me, it is not the institution that has provided these capabilities, because outside of the institution, I also took a lot of classes elsewhere.
Yes.
So to say I went to, okay, you guys can't see, but for those who are watching, to You Got This Academy, not mentioning all of the other places where I took workshops with Usman Bani, and I did that scene study workshop there, that audition technique workshop there, that breathing one there, vocal this, all of these different things, because those can't really go on your CV, on your resume, because they are one time in the moment type of workshops.
Yes, and they're so key.
And they're so important, you know. I find that it misleads people, because now you're going to want to go to this institution thinking that that's where you're going to hone your craft. Yes, you can get some form of information and knowledge, but it's definitely not where you're going to get from A to Z.
Absolutely.
You know, and I saw it even when I had Sans Group at the time, my acting studio, which is now the Actors Playground. Even then, like 70% of our students were graduates.
Right.
And that just shows you that no matter what institution, I mean, we can name all the institutions in South Africa. They've walked through our doors.
Yes.
You know, and you ask yourself, how much did you pay for?
Yeah.
Isn't the assumption is maungena la, ozopuma uyale and get the job. You know, so
doesn't work like that.
So I started in LA, and I did a diploma, but I was actually supposed to do a bachelor's degree. But the final year of the bachelor's degree was subjects like biology, English. They were like subjects that were compulsory to be done. And I was just like, I don't need that. Like, so if I don't finish, what do I get? A diploma? Okay, cool. Thanks.
There we go.
That's fine.
That's all I need.
So some would say I like stopped halfway or whatever, but anyway, so that's what I did. But in doing that, being in LA, there's so many places where there's drop-in classes. There's the Groundlings where there's like sketch comedy, there's improv, there's a whole bunch of different things that I was exposed to just
Yeah.
being that side, because there's such a huge culture of learning.
Yeah.
So I found myself in class with a lot of different types of people, which just continued to grow my work ethic
Yeah.
and my desire to know more. I mean, there's bookshops that are dedicated to actors, to actors. I mean, I think
That's
one of them
incredible.
closed down now.
Yeah.
But I used to go there and
Yeah.
like just mingle with other actors. You see one reading a technique, whatever, check off. You go there, hey man, so tell me about this.
Yeah.
So I think being that side and the culture that exists or existed at the time definitely helped me to grow as an actor.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And this conversation is bringing up so many different parallels as well. And I think that it's very important for people to realize that, yes, it's important to go through training. Just like if you want to go into any type of career, you can't just walk onto set and think that, I got this.
Yeah.
I know what I'm doing. You need the technical know-how. You need some form of training. As much as I also went to VITS for however many years I went to VITS, there's a lot of training that I got outside of VITS. A lot of it has been on the field learning. A lot of it has been workshops, just like you're saying. I remember Dorothy and Gold teaching us breathing. How to tap, that thing about tapping into emotions. She was showing us how you locate it in the body, and how each and every character has the way they breathe. Some of us, we get so lazy when we don't even think about how my character is breathing. Things like that. Academies. I'm so grateful that I studied. Well, it wasn't really studying, but like we did workshops around playback theater, which is an improv kind of theater.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, which I think is a good cue for us to play that game, an
Sure.
improv game.
I'm ready.
Cool. So the game is called Yes and. Okay, you can kick it off.
Are we good for time? All right,
Cool.
cool.
So yes and.
Do you want to have any scenarios, or are we just gonna go off the cuff?
Off the cuff.
All right. Whew. Sun's quite bright today.
Yes, and I forgot to bring my hat.
Yeah, yes, Vus. Every time I come here.
You have to start with yes and.
Ah! Damn.
I'll start.
Go for it.
The little girl walked down the dark passage.
Yes. And she didn't know where she was going.
Yes, and there might have been a monster around the corner at the end of the passage.
Yes. And I think there were little rats around the monster.
Yes. And the monster must have had his meal, because otherwise he would have been eating those rats.
Yes. And when the little girl turned left,
yes. And she said, I would love one of these rats as a pet.
yes. And this whole time, she wasn't sure if her mom was still behind her.
Yes. And she realized it was way past her bedtime.
Yes. And so she turned around and ran back out the passage.
Yes. And she heard a voice saying to her, you're going the wrong way.
Yes. And she stopped dead still.
Yes. And the lights came on, and she realized she was actually dreaming.
The end.
Yeah. Nice one.
Hungani set you up, bro.
Oh, that left turn. Oh man, I realized afterwards. I was like, oh, because you were looking at me, and I'm like, why is he still looking at me? Continue. I'm like, oh no, I need to finish.
Yeah, give me something to work with. But cool, man. It's been lovely. I really, really appreciate this, and I think that these kind of discussions are important.
Sure.
Hopefully, we'll do something like this again, and I'd really love to do that with you.
Yeah, no, anytime.
What's next for you, man?
Firstly, I think like these kind of conversations, or even just platforms, are quite essential. You know, so kudos to you guys, and I hope there'll be episode 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, etc.
Many more. Thank you.
For me, what's next? We did a play at Theatre on the Square.
Oh yes.
Which
Another
we
parallel.
just did as well.
Yes, yes.
And it's called Musical Chairs. So we self-produced, wrote, directed. It was a whole thing with myself, Genesis, Sipo, and Aurelie, and we are wanting that to go to the next space.
Awesome.
The goal is to possibly tour with the show.
Yeah.
And obviously that requires certain things to be in place and all that kind of jazz. And I think some people don't like to mention these kind of things, you know, for people to know, but I think it's very important to show the type of work that goes in for a show to be up.
Yeah,
You know,
there's a lot that goes into it.
And sometimes you want a show to get to a particular place or a particular level, and it can't because there's a lack of funds or there's a lack of opportunity or whatever the case is.
Yeah.
Because often people will ask, oh, when's the show coming back?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
when's the next one? You're like, if only you knew how much work goes into trying to get this thing into the next place.
Yeah.
So that's what's next.
Okay.
I'm really enjoying the, as some people call it, the Tyler Perry part of my life, being producer, director, and cast member. So it's hella hectic.
Yeah.
It's tough, it's taxing, tiring, stressful, but I think that it's worth it.
Yeah. Well, kudos to you.
Thank you.
All the best. And as I say, that I can't wait for us to break bread
Sure.
again in the near future. I've also stepped into a role that it's a very lonely role, the role of writing a stage play at the moment, and we
nice.
are also hoping for God's grace to get it to where it needs to be. Yeah, man.
Well, when you're done writing, you know,
Yeah,
we got a production company, we got a show under our belt, you know.
I'll be sure to contact you.
Please do.
Yeah, man.